welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming. Today we're going to be talking a little about They Came From Beneath the Sea. They Came From is a game that's currently on Kickstarter, so if you've not checked it out yet, please do so. And it's a game of my conceiving, my conception. I came up with it close to a decade ago when I was doing a Let's Play of XCOM Terror from the Deep on my YouTube channel. And some of you may have even watched it. Here's a little clip to run in the background while I'm talking about it. So XCOM is a game in which you construct a squad of aquanauts to fight aliens that are on the seabed and occasionally on cruise liners, sometimes attacking coastal towns and so on. And I thought this would be a fantastic excuse for a role-playing game, because the way I used to play XCOM was I would always name my aquanauts after friends of mine who were also on YouTube, or pop culture figures that I was a fan of, such as Flash Gordon or Ming the Merciless and things like that. And I just thought, this is a ripe territory that's untilled for an RPG. And so I ran They Came From Beneath the Sea, based on XCOM, at various conventions. It was a very mission-based procedural RPG, very serious, where private military companies from around the world were taking on a myriad of alien foes, and it never quite clicked. It was never quite right. And the reason it was never quite right is because it was just a bit too serious and frankly dull. We use the GURPS system. I'm a big fan of GURPS, shout out to Steve Jackson Games, but it just didn't work for me. And so I went back to the drawing board, and on and off I poked at They Came From Beneath the Sea again. The next time I took it up in earnest, I was trying something a little different. I wanted to keep the same idea, because something enthralled me about aliens not attacking from the sky but from the water that we trust, the seas that we know. And so I decided to go for that kind of B-movie feel. I wanted to go for the idea of aliens in the water, coming up, attacking our beaches, dragging surfers and sunbathers out to sea, and there being this mysterious threat. And every time I played it, every time I ran it, it just got a little more silly. And the players enjoyed that more and more. And so I started tailoring the mechanics to that as well. I came up with these ideas of quip cards and cinematics. Quips being your one-liners that you often see in movies. Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, made them particularly famous, but they appear in pretty much all cinema, all schlocky action cinema from the 1950s onwards, where a hero will make a pithy one-liner and everyone will laugh, or it will be enough to sort of set him over the edge or toward victory. And quips were a mechanic I wanted to put in the game to help players that weren't necessarily that good at improvisation. That was their first purpose. It was to help people that couldn't improvise these kinds of things. So you draw a card and that would be your quip instead. Or you'd have a quip noted on your character sheet already, and that was the one you used. Meanwhile, cinematics were a meta power. A power that the players could apply to the game to start altering the set, altering the characters you're playing with, the dynamic action. These cinematics could be things as simple as a cheap set that your characters could just burst through at some point. You could pay via some mechanic or other to use this cinematic at crucial points. So let's say you're locked in an underwater prison, a cage. You could use your cheap set to tear the bars apart and leave without an excuse in character for doing so. We have things like bad dubbing, where you could talk over aliens speaking in their alien language and decide what they were saying and direct the play as you saw fit. We had things like summon the stuntman, so if your character was not physically inclined whatsoever, that's fine. You replace him with a character with buffed physical statistics just to get past this single encounter. But as soon as that character is forced to speak again, the stuntman has to go away, because the stuntman has no lines of dialogue. Therefore, if the stuntman is running down the length of a submarine with the captain's pet dog in his arms, as the stuntman, running, and then an alien confronts him with the gun and says, "Freeze, who are you?" The stuntman may have escaped the flames behind him, encroaching on his location in the submarine, but now the stuntman's gone and you're back being the weedy scientist holding this puppy in your arms while a gillfolk points a laser pistol at you, and suddenly you no longer have the advantage. These kinds of cinematics are meta powers, and the idea behind them is the players can basically apply them to the game and start changing the direction of it. And as I say, the more we played this, the sillier it got, the more fun it became, because these powers naturally lent themselves toward a bit of farce. Now, I've ran They Came From Beneath the Sea as a deadly serious Lovecraftian horror game, and that works perfectly well. Unbelievably, because I was surprised, the quips still work perfectly because they give your character a little boost. It's the ability to add some more dice or play a cinematic for free because you have just said something profound. Now, you can make those quips into curse words, not as in swearing, but as in, if you're playing it Lovecraftian, it could be something in the language of Rillier. You just uttered it. That's your quip, and now something happens. That's your dread curse of Azathoth right there. But likewise, your cinematics, rather than seeing it as all the characters in a movie and you are the producers and you're moving things around, you can see it as your players are the gods. You are shifting things in play and making a collaborative storytelling environment rather than director at the head of the table, players around it. While the They Came From Beneath the Sea game that we have ended up with, and the one I'm happiest with, is definitely planted firmly in 1950s America, B-movies, rubbery creature features with screaming protagonists, strong-jawed protagonists as well, jukeboxes, dollar milkshakes, hot rods, greasers, drive-ins, and so on. Jerry Lee Lewis, of course, on the radio. You can play it in any way you like, and the mechanics still work, because this was the strangest thing for me when developing They Came From. When I pitched it to Rich Thomas, our creative director on Onyx Path, he said, "Do you want to use your own system, or do you want to use StoryPath?" which was being developed at the time for use with Trinity, for Scion, and Dystopia Rising, which are 3 other games that we do. And I wanted to think about it, so I had a look. I had already been working on my own system, and I was quite fond of it. But then I started playing around with StoryPath and doing my playtests using StoryPath, and I thought, those bastards who have created StoryPath, and I won't be able to credit all of them because I can't remember who all of them are, but individuals such as Neil Raymond Price, Daniel Lauzon, they both and more receive a hell of a lot of credit for the StoryPath system. They had created the system I needed. They had created it without knowing the game they were creating it for, in a way, because while I also used Danielle's excellent talents on They Came From Beneath the Sea as a writer, the system that she had helped create was exactly what was needed for They Came From Beneath the Sea. I just needed to somehow fold my quips, my cinematics, my tropes, and various other They Came From Beneath the Sea powers in, and I feel I've done so in a fairly effective way. Not just me, of course, but the other writers on this book. So, the StoryPath system, which we'll get into in a separate video, turned out to be the perfect fit for They Came From Beneath the Sea. The 1950s B-movie genre was exactly what I needed to make this game pop, make people feel that it had some appeal. And ultimately, I am incredibly happy with the finished result. We've got beautiful artwork coming in from Larry Blameyer, who has also written for the book. He's written all the fiction, he also wrote the quips, and specifically, if you're not familiar with Larry, Larry is a movie director. He directed The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, The Trail of the Screaming Forehead, Dark and Stormy Night, and Lost Skeleton Returns again. These are all the kinds of movies that They Came From Beneath the Sea gameplay comes to emulate. And it's been an absolute joy having him working on the book so closely. He's got a genuine enthusiasm for the game. So having him there amidst the rest of our fantastic writer talent, it has just been an utter joy. And it's a rare thing to have a project that you love working on from beginning to end, where each successive playtest does tell you something new, but most importantly, what I found was when running these playtests, people would stop when they were walking past to find out why everyone was laughing, why everyone was having fun. What was all the noise about? So if I'd run it in a shop or I'd run it at a convention, people would get so into They Came From Beneath the Sea that people who weren't involved in the game would want to know what's going on. And not all role-playing games need to be funny, not all role-playing games need to be fun. Indeed, and that's something we've discussed on the Onyx Path cast. If you've not checked that out, myself, Eddie Webb and Dixie Cochran. But They Came From Beneath the Sea can be outrageous fun if you let it, if that's the kind of game you want to go for. And with that, it just stirs up the enthusiasm of all the players at the table. So I've got to ask you, if you've not checked it out on Kickstarter yet, please do so, because this is the opportunity to essentially get yourself a copy. The entire manuscript will be available to all backers by the end of the Kickstarter. The book is already written. We are now basically supplying art for it, although no doubt if the book does well on Kickstarter we'll aim for some stretch goals too. It's early days yet, and it's always a bit of a gamble when you have a game that's a brand new property. We have no real way of knowing how it's going to do. We have to hope it will do well. We will release it no matter what. But my hope is that word will spread, that people will be interested in this new game with a new genre that's very rarely explored in our industry. And before I go, I wanted to talk a little more about the setting. So I mentioned it's 1950s America. I've mentioned the music, the atmosphere, and it's, white picket fences, it's suburbia, it's everything that you imagine in that kind of Stepford Wives mould. But you also have your aliens. And this is something I've not talked about much. And that's doing the game a disservice, because a lot of what makes They Came From Beneath the Sea so fantastic is the sheer number, the variety of alien menaces and their various agendas. We split them up into different camps. We have destroyers, and you can guess what they want to do, enslavers, invaders, spies and primordials. And we also have terrestrials off to the side, like the fish organisation FISH, capitalised, dots between, of course, and mad scientists as well, who wish to use this aquatic invasion to their own, to benefit their own agenda. But we have everything from gillfolk to crab people to were lobsters to killer dolphins to Atlanteans to glowing people who defy any other definition or description. We have centipus, the 100-tentacle octopus. We have the oblique, those are puddles that consume people. We have aquatapillars that shuffle up the coast and devour people where they're sunbathing. If you're too slow to get away from an aquatapillar, you kind of deserve it. We have the teenage shrimp, the boy that turned into a human shrimp. We have plumbed the depths of the sea, but we have not explored all of it yet. There are so many antagonists in this game, and they all have their own entry. And it's, if to use a reference from another game, it's Monster Manual-like. We give all of them background, we give all of them purpose, and we give all of them stats. One of the things I used to be very fond of with Dungeons & Dragons was the old ecologies that you used to get in some of the books for the monsters. How do they operate? Why do they operate in this way? And we do that for all of these creatures. So if you like to base a game around a specific antagonist and the way they're acting, then there are a huge number of adventures that you can have with They Came From Beneath the Sea. Absolute huge number. And I really hope you enjoy what we have to show you with this game, because it's been a blast to make it. All of the writers enjoyed working on it, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, or read them, because I'm not going to be listening to them. You get the idea. With that said, check out the Kickstarter. The link is in the description below, probably the very first line. We will be doing an actual play of They Came From Beneath the Sea on this channel, or our Twitch channel, in the coming months, I have no doubt. And there are also podcasts that are going to be starting to do the same thing. I really hope this game catches on, and I hope you like the sound of it, because it's a great deal of fun playing your mixture of survivors, scientists, plucky journalist mouths, G-men, and your everymen, your blue-collar heroes. This is the game that you want to play if you love B-movies, monster movies, action, adventure, cinema. There's so many different entry points into it, and I hope you find one of them. Thank you very much for watching.